66-year-old Stephen Aune has been found guilty of manslaughter in Walsh County in the shooting death of his daughter, 36-year-old Stephanie Aune. A sentencing date has not been scheduled yet. The charge carries a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. For background on this story, here's our original reporting that was published on May 2nd of 2019. The original charge of murder was reduced to manslaughter.
65-year-old Stephen Aune has been charged with murder in the death of his daughter. This is quoting directly from the criminal complaint that was just filed. The Walsh County Sheriff's Office received a report of an incident that occurred at a rural Adams residence that was located within Walsh County yesterday morning. The affidavit was dispatched to the rural Adams residence for a suicidal male, Stephen Aune, that had a firearm in his hand. Your affidavit arrived on the scene and saw Stephen Aune's vehicle, a 94 white Chevrolet pickup, wasn't parked in the driveway. Your affidavit attempted to use the patrol car's external loudspeaker to call Stephen Aune out of the residence, but it was malfunctioning. Your affidavit then blasted the loud audible horn to let Stephen Aune know that law enforcement was present but had negative contact. Then the officer went into the west door, knocked, and announced several times. They could hear movement within the house. Around the fifth attempt to get Stephen Aune to open the door opened slightly. Officers saw a black reflective object in Stephen Aune's right hand, and part of his face was exposed. Stephen Aune immediately slammed the door, and the officer went for cover. Aune then reopened the door, and the officer could clearly see Aune was holding a cell phone, and he was talking to someone. Stephen Aune told the person on the phone that was on the phone with him, "They're here to arrest me." The officer escorted Stephen Aune to the patrol car and asked Stephen Aune what had him so upset today, and he stated that he was tired of his kids leeching off him. The officer asked Stephen Aune who was currently living with him, and he stated Jane Doe and another family member. Stephen Aune told the officer that he wanted them out of his residence. The officer asked Aune if he intended to hurt himself today, and he stated no. The officer asked Steve Aune if there were any guns in the residence, and he stated no. Stephen Aune asked the officer if he was going to arrest him. During the investigation, the officer was informed Jane Doe, who was at First Care Hospital with an apparent gunshot wound to her abdomen. Jane Doe succumbed to her injuries while at the hospital. The officer then read Steve Aune his Miranda warning and asked him if he was willing to talk. Steve Aune then stated, "So, you're arresting me?" And I told Aune that he wasn't under arrest at this time and that the officer just wanted to ask him a couple of questions. The officer asked Steve Aune when he last saw Jane Doe, and he stated at approximately 9 a.m. Aune told the officer that Jane Doe was transported by a family member to the city of Park River. A family member of Steve Aune arrived at the residence. The family member told the officer after they spoke with Steve Aune at approximately 10:35 a.m., Steve Aune told him that he had punched or shoved Jane Doe in the stomach. The family member stated that what Steve Aune had said didn't make much sense. A family member was interviewed at First Care Hospital, and the officer was advised there was an altercation within the residence between Steve Aune and Jane Doe. The family member stated that she was inside the bedroom of the residence with the door closed. The family member stated she heard a loud sound of a pop. The family member described the pop sound being that of a pellet gun, or like a .22 caliber pistol being discharged. The family member exited the bedroom and saw Jane Doe downstairs leaning over the kitchen table. Jane Doe told the family member, "Take me to the Park River, it's serious and it hurts." The officer was advised. Steve Aune's demeanor changed instantly as he was in disbelief about what had happened. Steve Aune told the family member to take his pickup and bring Jane Doe to the hospital. The officer was also advised that they were the only three people inside the residence at the time of the altercation. The officer placed Steve Aune under arrest, and he was transported to Walsh County Correctional Facility.
Now, again, on this Friday, January 17th, the Walsh County jury has found Stephen Aune guilty of manslaughter. He'll be sentenced at a later date. I'm Neil Carlson reporting for iNews.tv.